Hey there, good evening. Um, Hope you're having a good, what is this, Tuesday evening? Thank you for joining me if you're out there. Just wanted to touch base with you again for my nightly message. Uh, Hope your week is going well so far. We're only Tuesday in, so we've got what, 3 more days? I guess I'll jump right on in. Actually, first off, the whole the name Midnight in the Valley. The background is again the idea that I was doing some research on time, and because there's 24 time zones, it's technically from 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. It's always midnight in that witching hour somewhere in the world constantly. So whenever this broadcast goes live, technically it's midnight somewhere. Whenever you're watching it, it's technically midnight somewhere. So if I am a little bit off in terms of whatever time zone you're in, it's technically still midnight somewhere. So I just wanted to kind of clear that up. I thought that was kind of a funny thing. Now, tonight's topic is on legacy. Basically, the idea is what is the legacy that you're leaving for future generations? What is it that you are leaving behind when you leave this earth? We see a lot of times you go to a cemetery, and sometimes after certain generations, you'll see a tombstone out there and you'll have no clue who they are other than the name and the dates that they were alive. That's it. The day they were born and the day they passed away. That's their legacy, just that. We don't know anything other than that. Maybe they touched other people's lives, or but we don't really know. So the idea is, to deal with this issue of legacy, and I wanted to talk about, again, I use movies and uh, songs as a touch point because that's what I'm really into, and I know that a lot of people are into it also, and it's a part of our culture is the visual media, everything from TikTok to movies to streaming, Netflix and chill. And so tonight's issue, I wanted to again deal with a couple of movies and songs and dealing with the idea of legacy. There's a movie that came out maybe 20 years ago now, um, called Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise, and 20 some odd years ago. And he's a sports agent who is a cutthroat guy. He's working in a cutthroat field, the entertainment industry, sports entertainment. It's all very cutthroat. A lot of a lot of underhanded, non-human activities in the name of quote unquote business. It's just business. And at the start of the movie, he's 35 years old and he's going through kind of an epiphany on life. He's really questioning his life. And it's like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And the movie starts off with him writing a mission statement. He's taking an inventory of his life. He's looking at his relationships, looking about everything that he's gotten him to that point in his life, his successes, his failures. And he says, we can do better. And as he's going through this inner turmoil, the movie starts off with him writing a mission statement that he sends out to his entire company. And he sends it out to his company, and some people embrace it, and others were like, "You're crazy. Why are you upsetting the flow? This is what we do." And he basically, it backfires in a certain way in that he gets fired from the very company because these people are firmly entrenched in this paradigm that they live in, this world that makes money. This is what we do. This is how it is. Don't upset the flow. Don't upset my cash flow. Buy into it and do it. And so the whole movie is about him trying to reclaim his life and his legacy. And it's a tough road. He goes and walks, uh, you know, solo, and he's dealing with relational issues throughout the whole film. And he references a mentor to him who was also a sports agent. And this fictitious character was called Dickie Fox. And Dickie Fox had these great little words of wisdom. And the writer and director Cameron Crowe, who also wrote the film, oh God, he did a lot of movies, Vanilla Sky, and going back all the way to Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He was the writer of that, and he wrote the book that Fast Times was based on. Well, they start throughout the film as little centering moments. You'll see a clip of Dickie Fox giving a word of encouragement. And I wanted to play, it's only about 44 seconds, but I wanted to play for you some of the wisdom of this character, Dickie Fox, that stuck with Tom Cruise's character, Jerry Maguire. And the title of this little video is basically Secrets of Success. And listen to these words. This is an older gentleman who had been in the game for a long time, learned a lot, went through life, and was, in his later years. And this is what wisdom he was imparting. And this is kind of the wisdom that stayed with the Tom Cruise character. And this also kind of ties into last night's discussion with Tuesdays with Maury. What you're going to see is, as I build on these, everything that I build on is connected to a previous talk that I'm giving. There's this connective tissue that you're going to see pop up through all of my talks about what is driving what I do, all the discussions I give, the angles I give, they're all interconnected. So let me play this for you real quick. This is the character of Dickie Fox, and it's only about 44 seconds, but listen.
The key to this business is personal relationships. I love getting up in the morning. I clap my hands and say, this is going to be a great day. Unless you love everybody, you can't sell anybody. Roll with the punches. Tomorrow's another day. If this is empty, this doesn't. Hey, I don't have all the answers. In life, to be honest, I failed as much as I've succeeded. But I love my wife. I love my life. And I wish you my kind of success.
So, one of the things that he says in there is, if this is empty, and he points to his chest, then this doesn't matter. Here's a man who understood that if you don't love everybody, you can't sell anything to anybody. This is the legacy that this man was leaving. And so the whole movie is literally about leaving a legacy, for leaving your mark on the world in one form or another. And so I want to talk about, again, musicians that I love, and some of the legacies that they left. And I'm going to go through a few bands. Elvis, singer. For the time on this earth, he is considered the king of rock and roll. For his window, he passed away in 1977. Now, that was, for me, I was 3-4 years old. That was the first news story I remember, was the death of Elvis. Because I knew who Elvis was. I had his record, Moody Blue, and I knew his other stuff from TV, You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog. I knew all that stuff. So when he passed away, that was the first thing I remember being on the news. Oh my gosh, okay, this guy passed away. Then you had other musicians come along. You had what was called the 27 Club. And this is kind of a dubious thing. The 27 Club are celebrities, musicians who passed away at the age of 27 who kind of left their mark. But before I get into that, I wanted to throw out another one. Marilyn Monroe as a celebrity. She had a limited window of time. She passed away, I think, at 33, something like that, early 30s, 33, 34. And look at her legacy today in terms of popularity, cultural icon, the connection she's left into this world. Other guys, Bela Lugosi. That's a personal favorite of mine because I was born on his birthday. You know, maybe I'm giving too much information out there, but I always loved monsters, and you can see I did a painting of him up there. Bela Lugosi is just somebody that I greatly admired, and the legacy of horror movies and stuff that he left. So the 27 Club. Oh, also, let me jump a couple of other people. No, I'll do the 27 Club. So the 27 Club were celebrities, musicians who passed away at the age of 27. Kurt Cobain, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Amy Winehouse. All of them died of different means, but they lived a very short life. But their impact, their legacy still resonates today. Regardless of how they left this earth, they did leave us a legacy of impact into the future. Another musician that I love greatly because he was such an originator, Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa passed away in his late 40s, early 50s of prostate cancer, I believe. He was just a musical genius, the way he thought and the way he approached his work. Comedians. Some other people, comedians are basically the barometer for society. Comedians have the ability to observe what's happening around them in the world and help us have an awareness of things that maybe we take for granted or just gloss over, highlight it and show the irony of what it means to be human. Two great comedians that were cultural, they changed the culture. Well, there's three actually that I really think about. Richard Pryor, so guttural, so brutal. He was a flawed man, but what he showed you was real. He was totally flawed. He made no bones about it. But his brilliancy was in his mind and in his way to see the world. George Carlin, another man who could just view what was happening around in such a succinct way and bring ideas just into a straight narrative focus. His legacy, his videos are, you watch any of George Carlin's clips now, we're talking about politics and society. He passed away 10, 15 years ago, if not longer. It's so relevant now, what he's said then. It's still so biting and so truthful. Another comedian that I loved as a kid, who was basically the inspiration for guys like Sacha Baron Cohen and his character Borat, was Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman was this guy who was not really a comedian per se. He was an entertainer who happened to do comedy. And his comedy rose out of characters he would create and the juxtaposition of his characters to his environment. Either you got him and you understood him, or you didn't. There was no in between with Andy Kaufman. He is amongst comedians, he's considered this guru. One that we just lost recently was Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald was a guy who articulate, understated, biting, and brilliant in terms of how he could tell stories, how he could engage the audience and do certain things. His legacy He was building his legacy as he was alive. So when he passed away, which shocked everybody, it's just like there'll never be another Norm Macdonald. And so these are some of the pop star celebrities. Now I want to talk about uh, getting back to music. To me, I think, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. There's a lot of discussion about this. You know, the king of rock is Elvis, the godfather of soul, James Brown, the king of pop, Michael Jackson. One of the greatest rock bands of all time, and I don't know what the title would be amongst pop culture enthusiasts, the Beatles. The Beatles technically were only a band. I mean, a well-known band. 8 years, 1962 to 1970. But the amount of work that they created in those 8 years, 213 songs that they recorded. Now, how many others they wrote? I have to do more research on that. But 213 songs that they wrote or recorded, and only a few of them were covers of other people's work, covering so many different styles, so experimental, trying new things at a time when experimentation, they were at the cutting edge of that social change where experimentation was starting to happen even more. To this day, we have two left. We have Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, but all four musicians in that band were all equally adept at being musicians, songwriters, um, contributing their stamp to this sound for that season of time they were together. 8 years, 213 songs, culturally worldwide known, world defining. And these guys were amazing. Now, a lot of times you hear the thing about the McCartney Lennon dynamic of songwriting. Two vastly different personalities, one more politically charged, which would have been John Lennon, socially conscious, and one more of the everyman kind of, you know, uh, pop writer, just kind of like the accessible everyman, and that would have been the Paul McCartney. And yet, when they worked together, the lyrics and music was just brilliant, and they also had their own solo styles. So the thing is, their legacy today is still referenced. And I'm going to talk about John Lennon a little bit later. But if you look at two of the key songs that the Beatles did that are considered pretty much the upper echelon of songs, amongst this huge body of work. Now, this is my personal opinion. Other people will argue with me about what's great, what is a greater song, but I think the two songs for the front runner for the greatest songs in their entire catalog, Let It Be and Hey Jude. I think those two songs really encompass everything about the finest of what the Beatles as a collective gave to the world and their legacy. Let it be. When I find myself in times of trouble, let Mother Mary comfort me. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. The idea of just going with the flow, having that freedom. Hey Jude, don't make me sad. Take a sad song and make it better. There's something about the collective of that when you do the hey, nay, na na na, that at the end when we're all doing it together. Now I also want to talk a little bit about world leaders. And this is going to get a little touchy. I picked out 4 world leaders that have left huge legacies. Abraham Lincoln, for his time in office. Hitler, now there's a dubious one. He's an easy go-to. Gandhi, and Jesus Christ. 4 individuals who, through actions and intent, changed the world. Now, there's other ones, Martin Luther King, all these other, but I'm looking at just 4 key touchstones for different reasons. Abraham Lincoln, because he was willing to work within a system at a time when America was the most volatile and use that system to achieve a greater good that was a blind spot in our American society at the time. And he paid for it with his life. And what's interesting, I just looked at my list. All 4 of these people paid for their legacy with their lives. They died untimely deaths. Hitler, there's one for you. Now, his legacy was one of destruction, one of conquest, one of domination, one of belittlement, one of terror. So intent and focused on changing the world, but for a negative driven means. And he brought with him death and despair. And he was given this window. And he himself died by his own hand, from what we figure. What it looks like is that he had died by his own hand. Now, the opposite of that, Gandhi. Gandhi taught peace, pacifism. You know, the tenets that kind of tied into, from an Indian standpoint, the tenets of Christ, turning the other cheek, showing passive, peaceful means to conflict resolution, which was going against the flow of the hierarchy of India during the time that he was alive, and he paid for it with his life. He was assassinated. And then we have Jesus Christ and his intent on the world, changing the world for the better. He was not a violent man, although he did speak out in certain aspects, the turning of the tables in the temple. He had a goal, a secret ambition. You know that song by Michael W. Smith, if you know that song, Secret Ambition, to change the world in a way that had never been changed before. And to this day, the scriptures that are read worldwide in every corner of the earth, and the recording of his life. And so many people struggle to this day with him. And there's a lot of issues, you know, some people don't like him, others do. And he's this controversial figure that has persisted for over 2,000 years. So the question you have to ask yourself with all these people is, what does it mean to leave a legacy? What types of legacy do you leave? How are the different types of legacies you can leave when you leave this earth? And I wrote down a few things here. You can leave a legacy in terms of material possessions, and that's like when you die in your will. Okay, this amount of money goes to this person or goes to this charity. This property that I own goes to this. The legacy is I've left you something material. I could have been a real jerk in life, but here you go. This is my legacy. This is what you get. Okay. So you can leave material possessions behind to be given to the heirs or whatever. That is your legacy. You can leave money to organizations to do X and build their programs. Then you can also have the creations and works of your hand. Look at artists. Long after I'm gone, you know, artists, writers, musicians, sculptors, all these items here that I've painted, all the artwork I've ever done and worked on a movie, that will be around long after I'm gone. The physical prints that I've created, some people, you know, I have them willed to family members and whatnot as part of my last will and all that stuff, which my affairs are all in order. But all this stuff here, the work of my hand, whether I put it up on the internet, they say the internet is forever, because once I put something on the internet that's global, somebody can take a screen grab and save it to their computer and print it up. So everything I've created art wise, and anything any artist has created that's been digitized and sent worldwide, is forever, unless you destroy every computer, destroy the internet, and destroy every physical print or copy of it. But the work still remains in the brain of those who remember it. Getting back to the Beatles, there's a great movie that came out a few years ago called Yesterday. And the premise of the movie is, what would happen if all of a sudden the Beatles music didn't exist? And one character wakes up one morning and the Beatles don't exist anymore at all. But yet he remembers all of them. He remembers every song. He's a singer himself and a songwriter, failing at what he does. But everybody he talks to, he goes on the internet, there's no evidence that the Beatles ever existed. So he starts to write from memory all the songs that he remembers of the Beatles as if he was the one writing the song, and he becomes a big popular celebrity himself. The movie progresses, and it seems like other people, again, worldwide, no one knows. The whole world changed in one day as if the Beatles had never existed. But a couple of other people pop up throughout the movie saying, we know who the Beatles were. And he thought he was going to be busted, but they're like, no, keep the music going. Get it out there. It needs to be out there. And there's this scene. Now, John Lennon was a controversial figure. He was an amazing musician, amazing songwriter, and but he was complex. He was married a couple of times, had affairs, had 2 kids. One of the people that he was with he allowed to help break up the Beatles. It's noted that he did not have a strong relationship with his first son, Julian. And there was a lot of conflict there. And there was a lot of hypocrisy. And in 1980, that was another big thing that I remember. December of 1980, he was assassinated in New York by Mark Lynn Chapman. And I remember everybody crying in the streets, watching the news. I knew the Beatles and I was into them. But again, I was aware, and I knew the Beatles at that time, but I wasn't 100% really involved with them at that age, because I was 7, 8 years old, something like that. But John Lennon left multiple legacies. He left a musical legacy, and he left a familial legacy, and he left a social legacy. The familial legacy is complex. There's some problems there. His musical legacy is well heralded, well regarded. His social legacy is a little bit more complex. There's one where he did the sit-in talking about peace and fighting against the war and the downtrodden. He's having a bed-in with Yoko Ono, and there's a photo of a maid fixing the sheets while he's doing his sit-in talking about the downtrodden. And he's having a maid fix the sheets for him, and he's sitting by. So this disconnect of like, dude, what are you doing? He was a multi-leveled person. And so there's an old saying that every single person has the capacity for ultimate evil and ultimate good simultaneously. It's a matter of what we choose to nurture. There's an old story about in, I guess, World War II. There was a, now I'm paraphrasing, but there's an anecdote about a Nazi commandant whose house was near uh, one of the concentration camps that he oversaw. And every day, and he had a family, kids and whatnot, and the house had a big yard when he had his kids and whatnot. Every day he'd go into the camp. He was killing people, shooting them, murdering them, doing his job, while his kids are back at home playing in the yard and whatnot. And after he clocked out, clock in, clock out, he'd go back home and he'd spend the rest of the evening hanging out with his kids, playing with them, uh, playing with them on the swing, having family time, the whole kit and caboodle. So to those kids, this was an amazing dad who left an amazing legacy. And to the wife, but to the people in the camps that he was murdering, he was an abhorrent monster who left a legacy of death and destruction. We all have the ability to do that in one form or another, and we're all capable of it, and we all make mistakes, and we all make things by choice. So we ourselves, we're not a one trick pony. We're not one angle. We're a little bit of everything. And so the types of things that we leave behind us are the creations of our hand, our life lessons that we learn, we share with our family and our friends, and hopefully people we can impact. Like this, to me, this video, someday when it's my time, if I keep this video up, you can download these videos, and maybe something I'm saying here will impact you. This is part of my legacy, sharing what I've learned in my coming up on 50 years to other people who might find some truth and kindred spirit in there. And so life lessons, now impressions of remembrances on the negative side. Now we can leave negative impacts from a family standpoint. How many people came from very dysfunctional families? I have some family members that are in my family tree that were really, really dysfunctional. And they left a legacy where I won't say I'm glad they're gone, but I will say with their passing, I don't mourn their passing. And I had developed a little more peace since they're gone, because the legacy in their life was something of destruction. What's the movie? What was it? Mommy Dearest? Joan Crawford. Now, she left an amazing legacy on film, but talk to her kids. Talk to Christina Crawford. No more wire hangers. Mommy Dearest. There was a whole movie about it with Faye Dunaway. That's a complicated legacy. Then you have the positive remembrances, the good things you've done in people's lives. We've all, any of us who are parents, one of the greatest gifts you can ever give your child to help build on your legacy, because you're not going to be perfect, is the humbleness and the ability to say, I'm sorry. It's not about being perfect. It's about admitting you're flawed. My parents were hit and miss with that. That is something that I've tried very hard to be in my life, to be very apologetic when I mess up, because I am going to mess up. I'm no parenting is perfect. It is what it is. We all make mistakes because there's no manual for parenting, because every parental and relational situation is completely different. You can't mainline, you can't streamline parenting. It's a case by case scenario, because you're dealing with free will of all the players involved and personalities of all the players involved. So then you go, okay, so if you look at what types of legacy we leave, then you say, well, what determines the legacy we leave? Our environmental influences, family and friends, things that we grew up that impact us, we take with us and we pay it forward. There's an old saying from another movie that I talked about, Magnolia. We may be through with the past, but the past ain't through with us. We have a tendency to carry our past with us. And that's not a bad thing. It's a matter of how you utilize that past. Ignoring your past is probably the worst thing you can do. Saying, oh, it's in the past, it's gone now. Embracing it and using it as a teaching tool for the future because you've dealt with the healing aspect of it allows you to take a negative experience from your past, see it for what it is in an objective standpoint, and utilize it as a great teaching tool for the future. Our own personalities. Now, my dad, complex guy, we had a struggling relationship. My dad had one of the best senses of humor and one of the greatest laughs. Quick wit. He could come up with these one-liners that just out of the blue, and he'd smile because he knew what he was doing. He'd have that look, and I catch myself doing it. He had this laugh that would ring in my ears. I've got the same laugh. So his legacy is I can hear every time I laugh and I get that guttural laugh, I can hear my dad in my ears. So my dad's never left me. And I love that. There are certain things about my dad that the legacy, some negative things that did some damage, but I've chosen over time to remember the best and leave the rest. And now I see my dad being that now I'm older and have a child. I see my dad through certain different eyes. And I've given my dad a little more grace because I see things differently. Hopefully, my child at some point, because kids are teenagers and whatnot, will go through the same thing. Our view of the world, as we see, our politics, our social understanding, that's another legacy when we impact people around us, our children. Hopefully, if we want them to grow up with a healthier attitude, we'll try to instill upon them our value systems that we've learned in terms of how the society should work. My faith background, I'm hoping my daughter is really embracing. She's in those teen years, and so right now is the rebellious stage and the finding her own voice, and that's fine, and that's a part of the process. Um, so I've had a lot of experiences in my life that have helped shape me, negative and positive. And I've wanted to take those things and pay it forward. That's what me doing this whole podcast is about. It's about putting in words, putting in some sort of media out there to leave a legacy for somebody. Long after I'm gone, maybe somebody downloads this video and they keep it on their iPad or whatever. Who knows? Or their phone and listen to it. Then that's part of the legacy. Maybe someday my kid will see these. She doesn't have social media like this. I don't believe. I don't think so. I got to maybe do a better job checking it out. But she'll see these videos and say, "Oh, that's my old man." Okay, I see where he's getting. I didn't understand it. There are things about my dad I didn't understand at the time. I understand now, being a father. So I look at some of the people in my life who are the most influential. Some of the most influential people in my life. My great grandmother. My parents got divorced when I was young, 7, 8, right around there. Tumultuous situation, and I bounced around all over California, all over, growing up, a lot of different places. But I had this real strong connection to my great grandmother who raised me off and on up until I was 26. The last semester of college, she passed away. My last semester of college. She was up with me my whole life up until the point where I launched into the world. And I was close to her till the end. Now, was she a perfect person? No, but she and I had a bond. And there were certain things about her, the the love that she had in her, even though it was in a flawed state. Uh, Her and I had this bond. Same thing with my great grandfather. Not my great. These aren't my grandparents. These were my great grandparents, born in 1900, early 1900s, and so they were there during the Depression era, the whole kit and caboodle. So 2 generations skipped, and I got the blessing of being raised and influenced by people 2 generations previous. Was my grandparents, was my parents, my great-grandparents. What kid gets that opportunity? So my frames of reference are really wide. That's the legacy they left in me. Um, 1999, for a very short window, I met somebody who was about 15 years older than me. I was smitten with her, and we sh- we clicked. Now, a lot of people in that time had a real big problem with us being together because of the age difference. So we had to be secretive, and there were a lot of jealousy. There was a lot of stuff, and I was going through a lot at the time. But we did date. We were together, but we had to be very quiet because we had all these outside. It was almost like Romeo and Juliet with all these outside in forces trying to keep you apart, outside, internal, and external. But for that window, we were very intimate. We were very close, and I learned a lot. Now, obviously, it wasn't meant to be. I left the relationship. She moved on, and she passed away, oh, 10, 11 years ago, of a medical condition that she'd had for a long time. It's actually when we were dating, she had the same medical condition, and it reared its ugly head again. But that experience for that window of time changed me. The legacy of knowing her changed my heart to grow up, to look at life differently. I found a card that she had sent me today, actually, in one of my curios. Obviously, it wasn't meant to be, but it changed me for my future relationships. When I got married, uh, I tried to do everything differently than I had done in the relationship previously. Was it perfect? No. But my heart was different. My intent was different. Regardless of how the other person was, I was a different person. So I went into that relationship with a clarity that I didn't have previously when I was dating this other person. But for that window in time, that legacy is still with me. Um, and obviously, it wasn't meant to be. They passed away, and I've moved on and whatnot. But for that window, it was meant to be because of how it impacted my life. From an art standpoint, some of the artists that I love that have impacted me to this day, my 3 top favorite artists: Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Van Gogh, for 3 different reasons. Leonardo da Vinci, because he was the Renaissance man. He was a student of learning, anything and everything. He was science, botany, music, design. He was just about learning and soaking up everything he could. That is so much a part of my personality. I love learning. I love reading. I love engaging with people. Anything that I can feel in my brain. Uh, that's why I identified with him so much, because he was always about pushing the limits of knowledge. Uh, Michelangelo. What do I love about Michelangelo? His passion towards excellence. Michelangelo didn't half ass anything. When he committed to a project, now Am I as good of an artist as Michelangelo? Heck no. Heck no. But Michelangelo's, what I strive for within my abilities is excellence as much as I have the ability to create it with my hand. Every project I do, my attitude is if you're going to do it right. If you're going to do it right. If you have the times and the means to do it, sometimes you don't have the time and the means to do it. So you've got to just get it out the door. But when you have the time and you have the means, if you're going to do something, do it right because that's your name on it. That's your stamp. That's indicative of who you are. That's what I try to tell my kid. If you're going to do something, do it right. And Van Gogh. Van Gogh had a very tortured life. He had mental issues, well known, bipolar, whatnot, suicidal, whole kit and caboodle. In fact, he took his own life. But Van Gogh took that emotion and all the things that he was rattling in his brain and used it as the tool to find emotion in his art that to this day no one can come close to. It's funny, I have a Doctor Who cup here for my tea. And there was a Doctor Who clip, and I didn't include it in this clip, and I should go back in and I'll put it in there. So again, all the media that I'm talking about today, I put all the clips in there so you can go back and look at them, clip on them if you want to, click on them. But anyway, in the Doctor Who episode, they go back in time and they bring Vincent van Gogh to modern day Europe, to the Louvre. No, not Louvre, to England, to a museum that's having a Van Gogh exhibit. So they take Van Gogh from the past to the present to an exhibit of all of his work. And he sees people walking around and they don't know that that's Van Gogh who's there. And he's flabbergasted because he never thought he was worth anything. He was depressed and he had a lot of self-doubt issues. And then they get a curator to ask him. They ask curator, and so Vincent can hear this, and the curator says, they said to him, what are your thoughts in 100 words or less on Van Gogh? And he basically says, Van Gogh was the greatest artist of all time, probably the greatest artist that ever lived. He was able to take the pain of his tortured existence and turn it into beauty, the likes the world had never seen then, and probably haven't seen since, and probably will never see again. It's probably the greatest artist of all time. So Van Gogh got to hear his own worth. It's a beautiful scene, and I'll try to put it in the links. So the legacy of Van Gogh, all these guys touched my life, and that's what I try to do. In anything I do, I try to bring passion to it because that's what I do. And so if I'm not stimulated passion-wise, sometimes I phase out. So there's a couple of other movies I want to talk about. So now we're at this point where we want to talk about deciding your legacy. What legacy do you want for your life? We don't know how long we've got. My dad passed away at 59 of a brain tumor. 3 of my best friends passed away before the age of 45. I'm the last one left of that little group of friends. I don't know how long I'm going to have on this earth. I don't. No one does. I watch a couple of things on YouTube about people who right now are blogging every day while they are actively dying in hospice. And I listen to their views of the world. And people say, well, why would you do that? It's gross. I said, no, it's not gross at all, or it's not morbid at all. I want to learn about life from people who are learning different lessons than I am, because I want to adopt their take on the world, their legacy. They're teaching me in their final moments of life. They're teaching me something. Got my doggy here. So the clock is ticking. Family wise, I'm going to be honest. I have some very fractured relationships in my families right now. Some things I have control over. We talked about the control issue the other day. Other things I don't. I can only do so much on my side of the equation in terms of these relationships. I can't control the response on the other side, because responsibility is the ability to choose your response. I'm only responsible for my choices and to take ownership of those things. I can't often control how other people are going to respond. That's their choice. Whether they take ownership of their choices or not, that's outside of my control. I can't do anything about that. So yeah, so I've got some fractured relationships in business, and but I've got some really good relationships in business with people. I've got some really good connections. You can't be friends with everybody. You can probably make enemies of everybody, but you can't always be friends with everybody. Why? Because there's too many personalities. If you're a chameleon, if you're trying to be friends with everybody, you can love everybody. That doesn't mean you're going to be friends with everybody. But if you try to be friends with everybody, you're chameleon and you're not being true. You're changing yourself to butter them up, and it's not healthy at all. Um, my dad passed away, and it was not it was obviously it was a terminal illness, brain tumor. And my dad had a certain personality. I loved the guy, but he was a very strong-willed guy, and he had a lot of personality quirks. We all do. My dad fought it. When he started getting more and more ill, I saw more and more anger, regret, kicking, the aggression come out more. The the less control he had of his situation, the more anger, emotion would come out of him. And it was a pretty tortured process because of his own internal personality. And I didn't see him the last few months. There were some family issues there. But then at the years previous, my great grandmother passed away, the one that I was very close to. Now, she had a terminal illness, old age onset leukemia, I think it was. And she was whittling in a bed, whittling away. She looked like somebody from the Holocaust at the end there, very skinny, very, gaunt. But when I would go and visit her demeanor was soft. She had a countenance about her, a smile, a joy. I mean, here it is, she's going through hell. Her body is wasting away. And she was, with what she could speak, we would talk. And I loved her. But I saw this piece about her in the process, different than my father. And so the legacy, I got to see two different legacies in terms of what I learned about, going forth and in control and whatnot. Now, another friend of mine who passed away about a month before my father passed away was a friend of mine named Brandon. And we had a complicated relationship. Friends sometimes, and then we would have arguments, and there was just this weird competition between us. But when we aligned, we were really aligned. Brandon, I always wanted to be a special effects makeup artist. And so Brandon was one of my makeup subjects. I would always do, he'd let me do makeup on him. So I got the first movie I ever got to work on. I did his makeup and I made a set of dentures for him. A really bad direct to video film called Karate Cop. It was, but anyway, I'm thankful. And it was a weird thing, for me to be a part of. That was my first introduction to how movies work. And it was like, okay, that was a rude awakening. Um, but then later on, I did makeup on him for things for my portfolio as I was learning my craft. Made him up as the Penguin from Batman Returns, the Danny DeVito version. And then I did this demon type alien makeup on him that I still use in my portfolio to this day. Brandon passed away about a month before my dad back in the early 2000s of cancer. And I am so grateful to him because even though we had that fractured kind of weird on again, off again friendship, if it wasn't for Brandon taking his time out and allowing me to do my craft on him, also was in a movie. He was one of the characters in a movie I directed in high school with all the friends, fun comedy movie. If it wasn't for Brandon being willing to do that, and he had a lot of fun because he got to be characters and he would let me try things on it. I wouldn't have some of the career opportunities I have because some of those pictures that I used got me jobs later on. I would not have some of the career opportunities I had without Brandon taking his time out and letting me do my craft on him. So his legacy has still paid dividends in my life. And I'm very grateful for that. So so how do you build a legacy of positivity in people's lives and not a legacy of pain, a legacy of indifference, a legacy of callousness? 3 words. And it's very these 3 words are very I won't say hard to do, but not for the faint of heart. First word is honesty. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with your failings, your shortcomings, your inadequacies, all of the things that you want to hide, your imperfections that you think will get you rejected from society. You have to embrace those things. You have to own them, not embrace them in anger. Say, fine, this is who I am, blah blah blah, blah, and then you throw it out there. No, you brace them in acceptance and said, yeah, it's who I am. I'm not perfect. Forgive me. I'm a work in progress, and I'm act sincerely trying to change. Some people just say, "Yeah, I'm sorry," but don't really actually changing. They're shining you on because they say sorry because they know that's what you want to hear, but they have no intention of changing their lives, and you can see it in their actions because the same problems keep popping up day after day after day, interaction after interaction, and it's like lather, rinse, repeat. I've had several people like that in my life where that is they tell you what you want to hear to get you off their back, knowing that that'll buy them time, but they have no real intention of ever changing and being honest. because there's too much stuff going on up here that they haven't dealt with yet. So, honesty, humility. I heard somebody say to me one time, I am the most humble person you know. I am the most humble person you'll ever meet. Listen to that statement. Tell me if you can hear the disconnect. This person really could not grasp their own lack of humility, narcissism. And I just don't think they would ever really grasp it because there's too much stuff going on there. Humility is key. Admitting you don't have the answers and letting go, going back to the control issue. And commitment. Not a lot of people in this day and age really want to commit to things. They bail when it gets hard. They always have an escape hatch from when it comes to being responsible to taking care of jobs, whatever. They always have some sort of angle that they can play to get them out of having to sacrifice what they need to sacrifice in order to go the distance to see a project through the end, whether it's a relationship, whether it's this or that. Commitment. If you can embrace those three things, you will change as a human being. It's not too late to create this amazing legacy. There are two other movies I want to talk about here before I end. One is called St. Vincent. It's with Bill Murray. And St. Vincent is literally, it's about a guy who is Vietnam vet, his wife dies, and he's a haggard old man. And he befriends a little kid. And the kid's single mom. And he basically, through this relationship in the course of the movie, changes his life, opens himself up to becoming a different person. He becomes St. Vincent. And where at the beginning of the movie, he's just this haggard guy who's different. But in the eyes of this kid and other people around him, he starts to change because he addresses some things in his life and he starts to think about his legacy. St. Vincent. Another film that I love, Royal Tenenbaums. I think it was one of what's it? Gene Hackman's one of his last movies, all-star cast. Wes Anderson. The character of Royal Tenenbaum is a family on the decline, a family of very smart people who had this glory at one point in life. Now you're seeing them on the downside where the glory's faded, the family's fractured, all these things are happening. And one of the characters, Gene Hackman, is lost, and he was the patriarch of the family, and he lies his way to get back into the graces of the family for selfish reasons because he wants to, have some control. But what he learns in his journey is he wants to actually leave a legacy for his family that is not about control, but it's about love. And he wants to be remembered a certain way. And he has to go through this process of change for it to occur. And so the final scenes, great films. St. Vincent and Royal Tenenbaums. And there's a song in St. Vincent. I'm going to play a little bit for you. I'm a big Bob Dylan fan. And this is a song that's played at St. Vincent, and it's a great scene in the very end of the movie. I'll play you a little bit of it, but find it if you can find it. You'll find it online. You can, and I think I did put the clip in there. Your legacy, when you leave this earth, can either be a storm to bring people heartache and pain, or it can provide shelter from the storm that people will go through in life. And maybe it's a little bit of both. We're not perfect. Like with my dad, I take the best and I leave the rest. Hopefully someday when my kid grows up, she goes on her journey, she'll take the best and leave the rest. She'll see me for who I am. Not a perfect man, man who loved her, man who cared, but somebody who was real, flawed, never tried to be perfect to my kid. And that's the best I think I can hope for anybody. We don't try to be something we want people to see. We be who we are. And in doing that, that's a great legacy to live because we get realness. If you don't love people in here, this won't matter. No matter what you tell them, they don't think you love them. Sometimes we hurt this area. We got to deal with that. So it's just a part of the process. Anyway, have a good night. Go find and work on your legacy. Impact people with positivity in your life. Reach out, have relationships, connect with people daily. Build on your legacy now. Have a good night.